Hello, everybody. My name is Kenji Nitsa, and I'm the pastor here at New Life Community Church. On behalf of the family, I'd like to welcome you and thank you all for coming to the service. Of course, we're here to celebrate Nora's life and to take comfort in each other at her passing. Let's open with a word of prayer. O eternal God, our Father, from whom we come and to whom we go, grant us the favor of your divine presence at this time in earthly pilgrimage. Assure us by your word that the one we serve, even Jesus, is alive and has conquered death forevermore. Enable us to view our temporary lives with the eternal, that may our spirits grow calm and our vision clear. Through Christ we pray. Amen. I'd like to invite Lawrence Bohannon up to share some music with us.
So please join with me in singing a couple of Nora's favorite hymns. So. I serve a risen Savior, He's in the world today. I know that He is there, whatever man may say. I see His hand of mercy, I hear His voice of cheer, and just the time I need Him, He's always near. He lives, Christ Jesus lives today. He walks with me and talks with me along life's narrow way. He lives, salvation to impart. You ask me how I know He lives. He lives within my heart. In all the world around me, I see His loving care. And though my heart grows weary, I never will despair. I know that He is leading through all the stormy clouds. The day of His appearing will not last. He lives, where Jesus lives today. He walks with me and talks with me along life's narrow way. He lives, salvation to impart. You ask me how I know He lives. He lives within my heart. proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou
I'd like to invite Terry up to share a few words with us.
Well, good afternoon, all, and welcome to the celebration of life for my mom. And really, when we come together, I call it our mom. Why? Well, our mom was for all of us. She was Mom Nora to most of you. If she was here today, what would her greeting be? Maybe I'll take this off. Is that better? Yeah. If she was here today, what would her greeting be to you? It would be, hello, love! And give you a hug and a kiss. Many of you have said that you felt her warmth and compassion. Why? Because it was honest and true. She truly did love and care for her family and her friends. Bernard and I were so lucky to grow up in a home with so much love. When I was young and she would answer the phone with the same greeting, hello, love. My father would turn to me and look and say, it's love again. Now I believe that's truly why I can't remember anyone's name. Because all of you are known to me as love. When our father passed, I spoke of the long and winding road. A song that two lads from northern England wrote, and a life that two people, our parents, lived. One of those lads also wrote another song called All You Need Is Love. And when I think of that song, it is the epitome of what our mother stood for. She exuded love. She set the bar very high for Bernie and I. She was by far the biggest influence in my life. I'm going to hold it together. And I truly hope that I live up to that bar. She was also very generous and willing to help everyone. One trip over to Russia she exchanged dollars for rubles. And she did this so she can go shopping. The guy took them to a souvenir shop where she picked out souvenirs to bring back for the grandkids and great-grandkids. And when she went to the cashier to exchange or pay, she pulled up rubles. Well, the cashier says, I'm sorry, but we only take dollars here. Which mother spoke out and said, we are in Russia, aren't we? The guy calmed her down, and she confirmed that this was for tourists and they only did take dollars. So after they left the shop, my father said, what do you plan on doing with those rubles? Well, she saw this older gentleman with disheveled clothes and holding a loaf of bread, and she said, I know exactly what I'm going to do with my rubles. She walked up to him, reached out her hand as he did his, and she clasped the rubles in his hand and closed it. As they looked in each other's eyes and both shed a tear, that was a lesson that she gave me and us of unselfishness from our mom. It also was a very much of a contrast of what she would do for herself, as she was very frugal. Growing up in the war, and being subject to rations had taught her not to splurge. And an example of this, and she did look for every single deal she could find, by the way. Example of this is there was a store called White Fronts that was having a sale. Now, who here remembers White Fronts? Whoa! I'm impressed. Bernie, we're not that old after all. Yeah, I went 5. No. So they had this dishwashing soap on sale, right? And in the box was a coupon. So when you apply the coupon, which she never got to use because I'll explain that story. So it brought the price down to about 99 cents a box. By the way, 99-cent store is also one of her favorite shops. So she bought enough soap to fill, and this is, Bernie had to unload it, so he'll confirm, it filled a closet off the kitchen from floor to ceiling, front to back. I remember using the last box of soap and looking at the coupon. It had expired over 10 years prior. Now that is a great, great deal. I mentioned that Mom grew up during the war. One of the things that was rationed also was textiles. Mom did have to work in a cotton mill at about the age of, I think, 14. She blames her hearing loss for the working in there. It was very loud. Later on, when she was getting married to our father, it was still hard to get material for wedding dresses. So she went up to Ireland to get some nice linen and lace to make her own dress. She wrapped the linen around her body and smuggled it back into England. Now, this is one of the many lessons I've learned in ingenuity from my mom. Some of you may ask, how did the Ogdens end up in California? Well, Mom was truly the matriarch of our family. And even though she was pulled out of school to work at a young age, she was able to gain knowledge by reading everything. Her vocabulary was excellent. And our father was no slouch either. He graduated from college with a major in mechanical and a minor in electrical engineering. And his father was a chemist, what we call a pharmacist over here. And Mom actually worked at the pharmacy for Grandpa, great-grandpa, which I only met once. That's where she gained her knowledge of drugs. By that I mean how they worked. Okay. Bernard was born in England, and then they moved to Canada when they were about 6, I believe, somewhere around there. Father had gone into partners in an engineering firm. Now, I was born a couple of years later. Now, Bernie says that they found me in the alley by the dumpster. But when I don't have a beard on, I really do look a lot like Mom. So I don't believe he's telling the truth. By the mid-60s, aerospace was booming in California. And Mom had had enough of the miserable winters that we had in Canada. We're watching the Rose Parade, and all the people were in t-shirts, and we had like 3 feet of snow outside. And she said to our father, "Jeffrey, we're moving to California before the year's done." Now, Bernie wasn't overly excited because they didn't have hockey in California as of yet. But I was excited because they have beaches. So, and that's how we ended up in California. One of the many lessons I've learned from our mom is to go after your dreams. Another lesson I learned from Mom was to be colorblind. When we bought the home in Duarte, we needed to find a family doctor. And I needed some shots so I could get registered for school. Now, Mom pulled out a phone book. Now, who here under 20 knows what a phone book is? Yeah. Well, it was something we used to lift phone numbers up or services up. We also used it for booster chairs for children. Anyway, remember this is the mid-60s and racial tension was prevalent. Not that I knew anything because I was so young and we just got to America. Mom opens the phone book and puts her finger down on the doctors and says, "This will be our family doctor." Now we went to go get my shots, and we were the only Caucasians in the whole office, but that was irrelevant to my mom. Not only was Dr. Corbin our family doctor until he retired, but he is a dear friend that stayed in contact to this day. And that is one of the many lessons I learned from my mom, is social wisdom and grace. So those are some of the lessons. However, I think my favorite memory is when I was young and getting off a school bus a block from my home. See, we lived in the foothills at Duarte, and it was really hot this day. We did have air conditioning, but Mom wouldn't run it just for herself when she was home alone. She'd open up every door and window and try to get a cross breeze. By the way, Mom was a very good pianist and had a beautiful, beautiful voice. So she's sitting at the grand piano, playing and singing. Her voice is echoing through the area, and as I get off the school bus, with the rest of the kids, they asked, "What's that sound?" And I said, "That's my Mom." Now, Mom has moved from continent to continent, country to country. She's traveled the world and experienced so many cultures and shared her experiences with all of you. I hope to hear how her stories and your interaction with her has affected you. She was truly a blessing. Thank you. Now my older brother, Bernie.
Three boxes of Kleenex up here. I think they're all for me. I guess the people around here know me. Well, people have been asking me, "How you doing, Bernie?" I honestly don't know how to answer that question, other than I'm taking it a day at a time. I knew today was looming. I knew it was getting close. And you want to encourage people. You want to be at peace. You have all these things that are happening in your life, and it's a struggle. So I went to a place to get some inspiration, and I wrote down some notes. Oh wait, no, that was something else. Here's my notes. I'm here today to kind of give you a Reader's Digest version of my mom's life. You've heard lots of memories from my brother, and you'll hear some from me today. My mom was born July 4th, 1926. Now, that's not a big day in England. But you move to America, and July 4th, it means something. The whole country celebrates my mom's birthday. And they still will, even though she's gone. When she was born, sirloin steak was 41 cents a pound. For $1, you could get 2.5 pounds. Round steak was 35 cents a pound. You could get nearly 3 pounds. Bacon, it's a favorite, right? Bacon was 50 cents a pound. For $1, you could get 2 pounds of bacon. No wonder we had so many heart attacks back in the 20s. Bread was 10 cents, gas was 14, milk was 45 cents. And if my mom knew the next thing I'm going to tell you, it probably would have given her a heart attack. But beer in England was 2 cents a pint. 8 cents a gallon. 8 cents for a gallon of beer. I saw a headline the other day in an English paper The Queen was looking at a bottle of Guinness, and it said, in her lifetime, she's almost the same age as my mom, the cost of beer has gone up 15,600%. To buy a bottle of beer in England now, it's £2.47. That's almost $5 for a pint of beer. My mom wasn't a great drinker, but every once in a while, I think she probably had some, especially as she was younger. She was born, I told you, July 4th, 1926, to her father, Harold Gartside, and her mother, Nora Gartside. She was named after her mother. 8 years later, they had a son. His name was called Harold, named after the father. You see, that's just the way you did things. And it's easy because when it's time for dinner, you say, "Come on, Harold, Nora," and everybody showed up. It was also a very tragic time when my Uncle Harold was born, because Mother Nora Gartside, several days after the birth of Harold, due to complications with the birth, passed. And so my mother and her brother, who was a babe in arms, went to live with my great-grandmother, Grandma Duffy. It probably had to do with the fact that men in those days didn't know how to do things with kids and probably weren't up to the responsibility. And we know mothers make a huge difference in life. You just heard my brother share for 8 minutes on that. So my mom, at the age of 8, went to live with her grandmother and her brother, and she took on an amazing amount of responsibility at 8 years of age. She learned how to cook. She learned how to clean. She learned how to sew. You heard my brother. She made her own wedding dress. My mom was an incredible seamstress. You know, back in the day before, we had sweatshops in China and India and all that kind of, my mom used to make a lot of her own clothes. And you would go to the store and you would get these packets, these envelopes, and inside these envelopes there'd be all these tissue paper things, and you would pin them to fabric and cut them out. Any ladies here know that? Yeah. Well, my mom would do that, except she would pick up the package and look at it and go, "Oh, this is ridiculous. I'm not buying 4 yards of fabric. I can do this with 3 yards of fabric." And she'd come home, and I swear, as I'm saying, she would lay out those patterns and do it with 3 yards of fabric. She got so good at cutting out, she stopped buying the patterns and just looked at something and said, "I can make that." And she would do it without the patterns. She was an incredible seamstress. My mom, when she was young, I think due to her grandmother's influence, was very much involved in church. I don't know if she understood God or knew Jesus, but she went to church a lot, and she had a tremendous voice. You heard my brother say she had a good voice. She had a sensational voice. She had great range and great volume throughout the octaves that she could carry, and she could sing at the soprano level, and she could sing down at the bottom levels. I don't know what those are called, Lawrence, but you can tell me later. But she had a great voice. And as she was singing in the church and doing those things, and she was getting a little bit older, she got involved in repertory theater. She would play theater, and that's what you did for entertainment back then. You didn't turn on and have 700 channels of nothing. You went to the theater because that was entertaining. And this one particular play that she got involved in was called Gaslight. I don't know if some of the older people here like me might remember that play. There was in England at the time a well-known actress that was traveling around the country performing that particular play. But this repertory group that my mom was actually not a part of at the time was doing it, and the lead got sick 3 days before the main performance was to start. And she had a friend named Ida. Ida jumped on a bus, traveled across Oldham, went 2 blocks, knocked on my mom's door and said, "Nora, we need you to come and play the lead in Gaslight." And she says, "When is it?" 3 days from now. 3 days to learn an entire part of a big major production and to go and do it in 3. She did it. She did it. And she carried it off. And you know how I know? Because she used to tell me she went to see the production starring the big star of England at the time. And she was walking out behind these 2 gentlemen. And this one gentleman says to the other gentleman, wasn't she very good tonight? And the other gentleman says, "Yes, she was very good, but she was no Nora Gartside." He had seen her perform and loved that performance. My mom was multi-talented, and she was not afraid of a challenge. She would take it on and carry it out with excellence. It was at that repertory theater, though, in that group, that something else happened in her life. After the production, the cast and crew got together, probably for a pint of beer at 2 cents, I'm not sure, but they got together to celebrate the end of the production. And my mom, who was definitely not a wallflower, was there, and I'm sure she was the hub around which everything centered. And all night long they're there, and right near the end of the evening, there was this tall drink of water named Jeffrey Ogden. My dad was the stage manager. He was the guy behind the scenes who made sure all the props were where they were supposed to be, and he made sure everybody was where they were supposed to be, and he would cue them from the sideline. No one ever saw him, but an integral part to making the production work. Well, at the end of this evening, he spoke, and my mom stood up and turned and looked and said, "Oh, look, it speaks." From that first statement, a 62-year union was formed. And out of that union, myself, my brother, my kids, my grandkids, the Ogden name has been carried on. It was a marriage that I never worried about divorce. Never once, 62 years, did I worry about divorce. Justifiable homicide a couple of times. But my mom was brave, and she was married in 1949. I came in to the world in 1950. I was a bundle of joy. She told me years later, if she'd have had me after she had Terry, I might not have survived. I guess I was a tough child. My brother was much more amicable and easy to bear and to raise. Well, at least when he was a baby. We'll talk about him some other time. But in 1956, Terry wasn't born yet, but my dad decided to open an engineering company in Canada. And so the family packed up and went to Canada. My dad went on ahead, and then what showed up in our house was this big, huge wooden crate. Now, you got a 6-year-old boy and a big, huge wooden crate. Guess where I spent my time? Running through that crate until Mom packed everything we owned in our existence into that wooden crate and nailed it shut. And then we moved to Canada, to Hamilton, Ontario, to a house my dad had gone on ahead and picked out. I can only say this was poverty-level living. It was a dump. As an example, it was the second story on a 2-story house. And back in the day, you used to take a bath once a week, whether you needed it or not. My dad had to go down the back stair into the basement, which wasn't finished off. It was just sort of sandy. He would go down naked. And then he would run up the back stairs. My mom would have a bath on. He would jump in the bathtub, and the fleas would float off him. Yeah, not pleasant. That's what happens when you send an Ogden man to do an Ogden woman job. That's all I can say. The landlord went out on a vacation for the weekend, one Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of deal. And on that Saturday, we packed up everything we owned and moved out. I think we probably left owing money, but I don't know about that. But we moved to a house called Fairley on Fairley Avenue. It was a real upgrade. We had 2 levels in that house because it was a 3-story house, and we had the 2nd and 3rd story. We lived there about a year. It became difficult to support the rent on that property because my dad's business was not doing well. Canada was going through you know what they say, it's a recession if your neighbor's out of work, and it's a depression if you're out of work. It was a depression because my dad was in and out of work. And he was a highly educated man, very skilled in his mechanical engineering, and he was good at his job. But people don't need engineers if they're not selling anything. And there were times when he was working 40 miles away in Toronto, and he didn't commute, and so money was tight. So my mom, who had learned about responsibility and taking care of things, and knew duty, and understood it was time for her to contribute, she went out and got a job. Her job was at a dry cleaning store. You would take your clothes in, and she would check them in. If you needed adjustments because you needed patches, or you wanted your pants higher or your pants lowered or your dresses tightened, she would do all those kind of things. And for working in that store, we got to live behind the store and above the store. And to the right of the store was the parking lot for the Hamilton, Ontario Hospital. To the left of the store was a restaurant. And behind it were the steel mills of Hamilton. And it's where I used to go and sneak in and get Coke bottles where they were melting the steel, so I could go to the restaurant and get an ice cream. 3 bottles of soda, I could get me a nice big ice cream. And the restaurant owner liked me, so he really piled it up high when I took those bottles in. We were not rich, we were not wealthy, but Mom had the ability to turn a little into a lot. Her whole life, she turned a little into a lot. My dad and her had a real hard conversation at one point while we were living on Barton Street. And the gist of the conversation was, if I don't get a better job, a permanent job, we're going home to England. And he went out on an interview with a company called Brown Boggs, and he got the job. And so we were able to move from living over the dry cleaning store up onto the escarpment of Hamilton. Hamilton is a bay, and there's an escarpment. It's a level up. And Mom found, I would say, a farm laborer home on a farm that wasn't operating. It wasn't really all that, but it was better than living over a dry cleaning store next to a restaurant. I know it wasn't much of a place because one day I was walking home with 2 friends from school, and we walked by my house as we were heading to the local market to get some candy after school. And the 2 boys walking with me looked at, our house was like 150 yards off the street. And they look up at this house and they go, "Oh, what a shack. How'd you like to live there?" And I don't know what I felt really then, but I felt a little bit ashamed. But what I said was, it may not look like much on the outside, but on the inside, I'll bet it's a home. I have fond memories of that house. Playing Scrabble with my parents, playing Monopoly, playing cards. We spent time together as a family. Terry came home to that house from the hospital, and I had him on my shoulder, and he crawled up, and he kept crawling up, and he dropped off the back, and that's why he's the way he is today. But I love those times. We didn't have TV. I was in junior high school before we ever had a TV in our house. But I had great times with my parents. You know, I remember I won a game of Scrabble against them. I won with the word quiz, Q-U-I-Z. I had the Q and the Z, and there was a UI somewhere on the board, and I got a 30 or triple word, and I was just sitting there waiting. They had to know because I couldn't contain myself. And I put it out there, and I knew I was going to win. And I did, yes! I never let my grandkids win in anything. Now this one here thinks she can beat me all the time, but it's not true. But it meant something to spend time with my parents, and my mom was instrumental in that. She organized family activities. She was 92, and I'm telling you, I would put her up against anybody in this room on Wheel of Fortune. I'm not kidding. She would watch Wheel of Fortune, and she had the answer before anybody behind the wheel did. She was that good with her words. She had a knack for that kind of thing. And I think partly because she read so much, as Terry pointed out, and because I think growing up, that's what her entertainment was, to read and to be involved. We left Fairley Avenue, we left the house on the farm to go to a house, a brick house on South Bend Avenue. It was our first house that we owned in Canada. It had a semi-finished basement and 3 bedrooms, and it was a nice place to live. And I have a little bit of difference on how we ended up in America, because we were in that house one winter, and there had been a blizzard for 3 days raging across the Niagara Escarpment. And I'm sure we were in the house playing cards and taking care of things, but you couldn't go out. Even the machines, the tractors that would clear the roads, they weren't running. So you couldn't go out in that weather. And so we were sitting there, it was Christmas, and we got a phone call from a gentleman named Alan O'Keefe. Alan O'Keefe was a boy that my mom had taught piano to in England, and my mother never met a stranger and never broke friendships. Alan still was calling her, even though they had been apart as teacher and student for nearly 20 years. He called her from Redondo Beach, and he goes, and my mother, she answers the phone, like Terry said, "Hello, love." And he goes, "Hello, Nora." And he goes, "Alan, how are you?" And he goes, "I'm wonderful. Where are you?" Because Alan traveled the world. She goes, "Well, I'm in Redondo Beach. Merry Christmas." And she goes, "Merry Christmas to you." "Well, what's the weather like?" "Well, it's 70 degrees and sunny." 70 degrees and sunny? My mom looked out the window. At the end of that conversation, in my recollecting, she hung up the phone and turned to my dad and said, "We're moving to California." It may have been something that right around the rose. That's the way I remember it. And November 14th, 1965, we crossed the border into America. We had to cover my brother up from head to toe because he was breaking out with measles, and my mom was afraid they'd turn us away at the border. We covered up his head. He's in the car. He's sweating great drops. But my mom was afraid they wouldn't let us in. She was not prepared to go back. And we went to Redondo Beach, and I entered school there. I did 1 semester at Redondo Beach, and then we moved to Duarte, where my parents lived for 30 years, over 30 years. She was involved in the church that we started in Duarte, and she was a stalwart of that church. She spent time serving in a club where she would dress up as a clown, put full makeup on, the full funny shoes and all that stuff, and she would go out to hospitals and visit the sick and the elderly and those who needed attention. She loved to give her life. If you know my mom, you probably heard her call you love. I'm sure everybody here has been called love by my mom. It's just the way she was. We got to experience that love for 90 years. My mom left this world April 9th at 5:52 a.m. My brother and myself, our wives, and a very caring nurse were by her bed. I understand the Christian faith, and I know my mom has not died as much as she has transitioned to the next life. It still doesn't get this 19 inches to my heart yet. I'm still working on that. Pastor talked the week before we went down to see my mom for the last time. And he said, God's timing is perfect. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. That's today. It's okay to weep today. It's okay to laugh today. It's okay because it's a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, a time to gather them, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away. Just a side note, my dad never threw anything away in his life. A time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race, yet He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. My mom had a beginning, she had an end, and everything was made beautiful in its time. For me, that time is still passing and will be worked out in the days and the weeks and the months ahead. But who can fathom what God has done? Why did Terry and I deserve such a wonderful mother? Why do my children deserve such a great mother? I'm just glad God chose, in His wisdom, to give us Nora Ogden.
And now we'll spend a minute or two celebrating Nora's life by watching a video tribute.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, or when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. With my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul.
start whenever you're ready.
All right, Michael wants me to tell you about things that have happened in my life. Now, in the summer months, we went fishing. We used to like to go fishing. Well, I did anyway. Jeffrey not too happy about fishing because he couldn't swim. And he wasn't too happy about going in this boat to start with. But anyway, I got in the boat. It's a rowing boat. And the other friend that was coming with us, called Woody, he was in the boat. And Bernard was in the boat. I don't think our Terry was born. This was before Terry was born. So in order for Jeffrey to get in the boat, to make sure it's steady, I'm holding on to the dock, but my feet and my legs are in the boat. And Jeffrey's getting in the boat. Now when Jeffrey gets in the boat, Woody pushes off with the oar, and I'm still hanging on to the dock. and here's the boat drifting out, and I'm hanging on to the boat, and I'm either going to tip the boat over, and if I fall in, first I'm going to drown. And I'm shouting, throw my feet over, throw my feet over. I can swim, I can swim. So finally, they throw my feet over. And so I swim to the boat and they pull me in. And Bernard always says I look like something that came out of the Black Lagoon. But China we loved. We did like China. And we were, everything went absolutely spot on time and everything. When the Chinese said they were going to do it, they did it. Everything was perfect. And we toured the South Seas quite a bit, Jeff and I. Went to Bali and Java, we went to Kuala Lumpur and Sri Lanka, and we went to Manila, and we went to the Philippines, you see, and Indonesia, and my goodness, I can't remember all the places we went to now. A lot of all these places. Borneo, Brunei. Went to the place where they shrunk heads, when they saw the shrunken heads. And I think that was Borneo. And then we saw the orangutans, where they had these, the orange colour monkeys or apes, whatever they were. Yeah. And of course we've toured Europe, in all the places in Europe. And I can't remember all the places we've been in Europe. We've been to Greece a couple of times and Russia 3 times. And then we did a cruise, a 53-day cruise, all around the south of America. And that was fabulous, because we were only 26 miles away from Antarctica when we got down there. Then I can't remember all the places we've been to now, because we've been so many. But the thing is this, when we got to Australia, one of the things that was, I think I told you about it, where we saw the moon on one side and the sun on the other when we were travelling. Well, when we got to Australia, there was no tour guide there. And so I kind of kept, Brown Owl again, kept all our group together. I said, we should stay together till somebody comes to collect us. So then this man finally comes running in, and he said, oh, I'm awfully sorry. He said, but the girl that was supposed to take care of you quit yesterday, and I haven't even, I've been trying to find somewhere to house you, you see. We have no place to stay, so he put us in a motel. You see, he had to find transportation for us and a motel for us, and the poor guy was absolutely at his wit's end. So that was the beginning of our trip in Australia. And then he said, I'll try and find you something different. So he found us something different. It was in the red light district. All these prostitutes were Jeffrey. Every time Jeffrey walked out of the on the street, he got these prostitutes were after him. Oh, it was great.
It is well. It is well with my soul.
Now I'd like to invite Abigail up to share a poem.
Today I'm going to be saying a poem to my great grandma. The one who always gave us candy, the one who gave us money every holiday, the one who has a British accent, my great grandma. The one who always played cards with me for hours. She played cards with me any way we could, my great grandma. The one who told me stories about her childhood, the one who traveled the world and told about her adventures, my great grandma. The one who always bought jewelry off the TV for us. The one who always watched Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. The one who always read and never stopped, my great grandma. The one who lived with my grandparents for at least 7 years. The one who kept on moving from one place to another. She moved to Long Beach and never came back, my great grandma. The one who always made me smile. The one who always made me laugh. The one who always drank hot tea, never water. The one who always wanted to see us, my great grandma. The one who died on April 9th, 2019. The one who lived until 92, my great grandma.
I invite Mike to come up and kind of lead us in a time of sharing.
All right, my dad shared the Reader's Digest version of my grandma's eulogy, so I'm going to share the full version now. No, just joking. Just have a few stories to share about my grandma. There's so many things I can pick, but I'm going to keep it short because I want to hear from all of you. One from high school. My grandma cooked one thing for me that I absolutely loved. Chimichangas. Raise your hand if you ever had one of my grandma's chimichangas. Oh yeah, Melissa James knows. Nothing better than some deep fried meat, cheese, beans, and a bunch of love. And butter. Lots and lots of butter. So in high school, when I was a senior, all my friends would, go off campus. That was a cool thing to do. Go to McDonald's, go to Taco Bell, go to all these places. And, after a while, it gets kind of boring. And several of my friends had met my Grandma Ogden. And one day I said, hey, guys, you want to go to my grandma's? Have some chimichangas? And they looked at me. I was, a little unsure about how they were going to react. But they were like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And so I called my grandma the next day, brought a bunch of my buddies over, and we had chimichangas with my grandma. And we ended up doing that several times throughout the year. So definitely some memorable times there. Another one was in high school and into college. I would pack up all my tools and gardening tools and lawnmower, and I would head on over to my grandma's house and mow their lawn. So just a few blocks away and pack everything and spent some good quality time with my grandma. We'd plant flowers together and do different things, but it was just so funny to me because, she would, of course, pay me $10, $20 or whatever to mow their yard, front and backyard. But every time she would go to pay me, she would always try to find where Grandpa Ogden was, Jeffrey, and call me over to the opposite side of the house where Grandpa Ogden was, and she would be like, Michael, come here. And she'd have her little cart. She had a bunch of money in there, and she would call me over, and she treated it like it was like a drug deal. She would be like looking around. She would like listen for Grandpa, like, what is it? This is weird. And she'd like, here, take an extra 20. Oh, take another 20. It's okay. And she would just keep handing me some money. I'm like, Grandma, it's okay. I don't need all that. But it was just so funny because she was so cheap. But when it came to her grandkids, you know, she really loved on us that way. And it was just funny the way she treated those scenarios. The last one I'll share is she had a van, a really old van. And it was a 1996, I believe, Mazda MPV. And in 2010, I was in college, and a couple of buddies and I decided to go on a road trip all the way up to Canada. And we thought, hey, we need to find a vehicle to do that in, pack all our stuff, throw all of our stuff in the back. And so I called my grandma and explained it to her, and she obliged, and she was happy to do that. And the problem was, I think she told my grandpa we were only going to Sacramento, but that's okay. We got in the car, we turned it on, and we look at it. This car only had like 15,000 miles on it. It was 15 years old with 15,000 miles. And she only drove that thing to, McFrugal's and, 99-cent store and back. But, yeah, that was a good time. One last special thing that really hit me hard when we went down to visit my grandma down in Long Beach. She said, Michael, she said, we have a good family. And she was very frail, very weak, could hardly speak. She says, we have a good family because whenever somebody is in need, we are always there to help. And that hit me really hard because it's very true. And I love that time with my grandma. I want to open this up to anybody who wants to share. We have a microphone here. If you have a special story or something you want to share about my grandma, we'd love to hear. Don't be shy. I can start calling out victims here if we need to. Go ahead.
My relationship with Nora started about 47 years ago, and we have been through a lot together. She always told me I was the daughter she never had, and that was special to me. My mom passed away about 19 years ago, and about 18 years ago, we felt a need to have Jeffrey and Nora. They lived in Duarte, and just that long-distance relationship of them being, getting up in age and older. And so we convinced them, was not very hard, to move up here. And she spent all those times, years up here, and about 7 years ago, when Jeffrey passed away, she moved in with us. And we became even closer during that time. And some of the things that we did today, we did shop till we dropped from one place in Fresno to the other, and I was usually the driver. We went to Roger Rockets together, something she loved to sing. She became a part of this church and got to know a lot of people in this church. If you look in the back, she became a Lakers fan when she moved in with us to have some commonality with Bernie and I, but that's when the Lakers were doing a whole lot better than the last couple of years. She even kept score back there of wins and losses, and some of the players, she got irritated that as she yelled at the TV to bend your knees, but yeah. She loved the Lakers, and it was just something that she looked forward to. She was a part of special events, women's things at this church, and we vacationed, we cooked together, her many surgeries. I was her nurse and rehabbing at home, and the list can go on and on and on, and we just had a really, really special relationship. But there's two things that I want to remember Nora by, and one is, let me get this. She has a cup here, and it says, Great Grandma, Melissa gave this to her, your heart holds generations of love. And this is so true because she, as you has heard, she was she's, English. And I know when I first came in this family, Jeffrey had a his English accent was, I don't know what he said. It took me a while, but I finally got it. But I think she holds the hearts of love. And let me check my notes here. Anybody that was around her saw that she just loved everybody, and I think you've heard that today. And the other one says her name. And it's funny because yesterday I was up in the cupboard, and I knew there was a Lakers cup up there. And so as I looked around, oh, this one says Nora, and Melissa gave this to her as well. But it says more than that. It says John 3:16 down here at the bottom. And Nora had a special relationship with the Lord. One of the things that she did is she loved to sit on her bed when she went to bed and she'd pray. And sometimes she'd pray for an hour, and we always knew it was like the Waltons, because when she finished praying, she would say, good night and God bless, and we knew she was done praying. And that was, but she had a special, every night you would find her just praying. I know Marguerite, who passed away maybe a month before she did. She's 107, and she was her good friend here. And I know we did not tell her that Marguerite had passed away because she was very ill, but I think that she was jumping for joy when she went into the arms of Jesus and then saw Marguerite. I know that she would be very excited. Nora knew no stranger. She had a brilliant mind until the very end. She shared God's love with everyone around her. And if I could say this, Nora, you will be missed, but your love will remain in many hearts of people you have touched.
I thought that I would share a couple quick stories with Nora. Oh, I'm Renee. I'm Terry's wife, and so we've had the pleasure of having Nora in our lives down in Long Beach. Sorry, give me a second. I'm a real wuss when it comes to this, so just bear with me. When I think about all the different words that you could use to describe her, it really comes down to generous. She was generous with her spirit and her love. Excuse me. Sorry. I need to pull it together. With everyone she came into contact with. Everybody loved her so much. And so when I thought about, God, what kind of gift could I give her, right? Would be to be generous back with her, to be able to take care of her in her final weeks and days. And, she loved her tea. She would have her English tea, as she would call it, when we would come down for dinner, which meant that it had a really good shot of brandy in it. And she loved her English tea. And even very close to the very end, she would say, I want a warm glass of tea. And so you'd bring her some tea, and it became more and more difficult to put a cup up to her mouth. And she said, I want it in a proper glass, a proper cup. She was very specific about how she liked her things, whether it was that or her fish and chips. They better not serve her fish and chips without steak fries. Let me just tell you. That place was off the radar. So we had a lot of really precious moments. And as you heard, she loved to read. And in Long Beach, we have a little local book exchange called Riley's Book Exchange. So it's a little red wagon. And so you could go and exchange your books and get some. And she loved her James Patterson and all of her different books. So we would go on a pretty regular basis, and it was one of the shopping days. So we'd hit the 99-cent store, and then we'd go get fish and chips, and then we'd stop by the book exchange. And so, you know, Nora's pretty famous wherever she goes, right? So the gentleman that has the book exchange, it says that you have 4 books that you can exchange or that you can take per person. So we would pull on up and get the walker out, and she'd come on over and sit on her walker and look at all the books and, oh, I want that one. Yeah, that one right there, under there. Okay, that one. We'd start stacking them up. And so I'd say, Nora, we're at 8 books. We're at 8 books. She's like, oh, that's right, but they won't mind. So I said, well, let's keep it to 8. So one of the next visits that we went, my girlfriend was over, and she goes, Robin, why don't you come with us? She's like, okay. So we all pile in the car, and she says, I'm so glad you're here, because now I can get 12. So, Justin, who runs it, had said, Nora, you can take as many books as you want. I'm never going to hold you to 4 books per person. So she lit up a room, as you all know, and it was just my honor to be able to spend that time with her and make sure that she was surrounded by love and familiar surroundings in a home that loved her very much.
Thanks, Renee. And my mom, anybody else want to share? Any stories? Come on, Melissa James, come on up. Oh, Gonzalez. I know he is Melissa James.
Nora Ogden was chimichangas, and trips to Disneyland, and being able to stay in her house. I have so many memories of Nora. I mean, I remember Michelle saying, "Oh man, my grandma and grandpa are coming," and I'm like, "Yes, chimichangas and lamb." I know, because those are always the 2 things that she would always cook, and we would go shopping or we would do whatever, and it was just play cards, and she was another grandma that I got to have. And it was really special because, unfortunately, my grandma didn't make my wedding. She died a couple months prior to my wedding, but Nora was able to be there. And it was kind of like having a little bit of my grandma there. So that was very special for me. She was just a wonderful person that she would do anything she could for you. And it was an honor and a privilege to be able to call her Grandma.
Thanks, Melissa. All right, anybody else want to share a story? Come on up. Yeah, come on up. Sure.
My name is Roland Listoped, and Miss Nora was like, well, when I saw the name Queen, or the Queen Nora, I was like, Your Royal Highness, which meant she had honor in her name. And sorry, I'm getting kind of teary. Sorry, Mr. Bernie, if I'm taking your place. I might need to borrow those tissue boxes later. Thief. A while back, I don't know, but I saw my picture on the slideshow, and I remember when I gave her the love letter. and it was sad for me. It was sad for me that she left us so early, because I wanted to say goodbye, but I didn't. It's to my aunt. I try making jokes to cover up my depression, but when Miss Nora passed away, I just imagined her going up to heaven, seeing Jesus with the love letter in her hand, and everyone else's passion for her, their love. That was our names. We're all just a bit of her heart. And I know that I'm getting kind of staggering, so I'm going to make this quick. Dear Miss Nora, we all wish you a final goodbye.
Thanks, Ron. Everybody give him a round of applause. Thanks. Stacy, come on up.
I'm kind of like Sherry's adopted sister, and I've always been included in their family, which included Nora. And I don't know if you know much about Nora and card playing, but she was a card shark that you could not believe. And sometimes, because you wanted to have an even number when you're a male, we always play guys against the girls. And sometimes Nora would sit on the guy's side, and they'd always win. And I said, Nora, I don't like it when you play for the guys. And she says, you got to have someone intelligent on that side sometimes, Stacy. And now this one, okay, you can pray for me later, okay, on this one. But I belong to a secular book club. And Nora and I would share books, and we talk about books. And I told Sherry she should come to book club with us. At this time, she wasn't quite as comfortable as, she had the walker and stuff like that. And she said, Stacy, what are you guys reading? Okay, I didn't pick the book. 50 Shades of Grey. Okay, forgive me, God. Okay, forgive me. 50 Shades. And Nora looked at me, and I wouldn't have thought she knew what 50 Shades of Grey was all about, but she must have, because the next time I saw her, she goes, Stacy, come here, Stacy, Stacy. And she had all these Amish book series she wanted me to read. I think I still have some, okay? But I loved her, and she was like a grandmother to me as well. She was an amazing woman. I feel like we've all been blessed and touched by her. And I'm thankful to the Ogdens for including me in their family and making that possible.
Thanks for sharing, Stacy. All right, I'm going to pass it over on to Kenji.
Now we'll invite Sarah to come up and share a song with us, along with Lawrence.
My mom had one request for today, and that was that this little lady here would sing for her. So I am so grateful to Sarah for making this day perfect for my mom.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. appear. The hour I first believed. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see.
I'm going to close now. And in closing, I'd just like to say that in the scriptures it says that God holds all of our tears in a bottle. And he remembers every tear we've cried. And that in Jesus, not only does he know theoretically about the tears we've cried, but he's actually felt the kind of pain himself. That he's felt loss, that he's felt that hole in the heart that people leave when they're gone. But I just want to say that, wouldn't it be a sad thing if we came to a funeral and there were no tears? It's okay to let your hearts break if it's love that's broken it. That's the right way to cry. And it's a good thing. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I just thank you for the whole Ogden family. I pray your comfort into their life. And I pray for the good kind of sadness. Lord, I pray for help for the family. Lord, I pray for hope for the family. We thank you for Nora, for her life, for her love, for her brightness. Lord, we thank you that she's with you now. And we look forward to the day when those of us who know Christ will be able to rejoin her in your presence. Lord, we pray again for comfort, for hope. We pray that your grace, that the love of Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit would be with us all forevermore. Amen. On behalf of the family, I'd like to invite you to stay here because there's going to be food. Spend time with each other, comfort each other, be with each other. Anything to add, Bernie? Okay.